if I were to speak in the most general terms, there are some skills that that I acquired over the course of my career as a Scrum Master, which I'd say which came in pretty handy. First is the skill of negotiation. So being able to recognize where to make trade-offs and where not to make trade-offs, and how do you sometimes recognize the pulse of the audience, because some people are visual learners, some people are data-driven learners. So how do you recognize those kinds of nuances in the personalities so that you can navigate through conversations accordingly can really help. Some good resources to get better at just negotiation in general, I'd say. So look up this guy. His name is Deepak Malhotra. So Professor Deepak Malhotra teaches the skill of negotiation at Harvard Business School. His book, Negotiating the Impossible, is a really good book. I've read this a bunch of times. It's one of my favorite books on this topic. He really walks through different ways of how you can navigate difficult conversations or crucial conversations, especially when you're, like you said, you have say you have a schism between the expectation from a product owner versus a stakeholder or a business stakeholder, right? So how do you bridge the gap there? How do you get them to start from the outcome and then reverse engineer back into whatever the common outcome needs to be or the common goal needs to be? Deepak Malhotra has a bunch of different techniques how you can walk through some of those things. How do you make discussions more visually collaborative? When do you insert novelty, contrast, humor, emotion in the conversation so that you can, again, continue to navigate the conversation through both convergent thinking, which is mostly feasibility and solutioning, and divergent thinking, which is more ideation. Some good resources there. I'll give you one more. This is more training, I'd say. So check out this guy, Chris Voss, and the book is called Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss also runs 2 masterclasses on negotiation. I've taken both of his masterclasses in my career. It really helped me, especially not just as a Scrum Master, but now I work as a Senior Director at Salesforce. So I'm part of middle management, where I have responsibilities for people in a process and I guess delivery perspective also. So just up-leveling certain conversations and creating the appropriate back pressure when you're navigating difficult conversations with people above you in the hierarchy. The right economy of words that can create the maximum amount of impact with the minimum amount of effort. Chris Voss teaches you a bunch of different techniques on how to do that. So how to convert a no into a yes into a no into a not yet, how to recognize the difference between when people have checked out of conversations versus when they are still checked into the conversation, but you're going to lose them very quickly. I'd say negotiation as a skill, if you can professionally invest in from learning and development standpoint, can really help you. In addition to this, or sort of just cross-referencing this with some professional facilitation skills can also help in general from a public speaking standpoint, or just getting a more 3-dimensional situational awareness of who you're talking to and how you're supposed to conduct yourself. For that, I'd recommend this. Yeah, you can check this book out. It's actually a sort of a field manual, which is a collection of 500 ready-to-use facilitation techniques. So Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making by Sam Kainer. It's a really lovely book. I have it on my bookshelf. I look at it almost every other day whenever I'm in any kind of conversation where I have to facilitate actively, where I'm not doing most of the talking, but I have to drive the discussion towards a certain outcome. It's an amazing book because it's 500 pages thick, but it's almost 0 pages of theory. Every page in that book is listed as a tabular format with a facilitation technique. So inputs, outputs, expected outcome, intended audience, potential rabbit holes to watch for. Sam does an amazing job of walking through different kinds of scenarios. Facilitation and negotiation would definitely be 2 top skills from a speaking and from an analytics standpoint of not analytics of data, but analytics of conversations. In addition to this, having a good, robust knowledge base on understanding the applicability of any kind of a flavor of Agile and its suitability for the kind of work that you're doing, which is going back to the Kinnaman model developed by Dave Snowden. So some kind of education on that can really help you, because then you become sort of this subject matter expert on assessing when to use Scrum, when to use Kanban, how much process is too much process, how much process is not enough process. Because what you mention around expectation between, say, product owner and stakeholders, that's a prioritization issue, right? So somebody somewhere thinks about outcome a certain way that the other person doesn't agree with. So it's just a conversation now. And so to be able to have those specific data-driven conversations, these kinds of skills and resources can go a long way. So I'd say one of many things. And now the wheels are turning in my brain. I'm going to give you one more, right? So this is probably something that you don't want to look at immediately if you're starting up your career, but as you get closer towards like middle management and senior leadership, understanding this concept called systems thinking can really help you. A lovely, lovely book on systems thinking would be this one. It's my favorite book on this topic. It's called The Fifth Discipline. It's a book written by Peter Senge, who has taught at the Sloan School of Management at MIT for almost 2 decades. So it's a collection of his experiments in his dealings with the corporate CEOs, plus his academic cohorts, all the experiments he has run. There are a bunch of different case scenarios in the book, different management principles. Basically, systems thinking is about thinking about everything as a system and not just locally optimizing, which human beings, as you read the book, you will realize we are all naturally, we have this proclivity towards locally optimizing. It's kind of like as simple as, if you want to get healthier in life, then one of the things you want to do is focus on the entire body, right? So you want to focus on the stress level, you want to focus on your sleep patterns, your hydration, your nutrition, and your workout. It's not just one thing. Like going to the gym for 2 hours every day is not going to solve your problem. So it's optimizing for the entire system as opposed to locally optimizing for one place. Local optimizations are very common with people who are new to management, especially people management. You will see people throwing more bodies at a piece of work because there's urgency and expecting that work will get done, or artificially increasing the timeline or reducing the timeline, and then putting more pressure on the team. Those are essentially local optimization cognitive biases, which a lot of new managers and new scrum masters also to a large extent will be falling victim to earlier on in their careers. So I made those mistakes, I learned from them. That's why I'm recommending that you look at these resources so you don't make those mistakes.